No one thinks about buying a house with their credit cards. But guess what? I've done it, and I've lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, well, tell us how that worked out.
Well, so this was a super low end property, and I'll pause right there and say, don't do that. Like, don't do that at home, right? But this was a low end row house in Baltimore City. I bought the house for around $14,000. I put another $12,000 to $13,000 in renovations into it, and I was able to. So first of all, you can put the material costs directly on the credit card, right? Like you can swipe that at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you buy your materials. A lot of contractors will also accept credit cards. Now, often they will charge a convenience fee, like a 3% convenience fee, but that's the cost of buying things with your credit card, right? Or at least.
And some you could get points.
Yeah, you might be able to offset, 2 out of that 3% with points, for example. And you don't have to pay points with credit cards the way you do with a hard money loan, right? So that is one of the big advantage here is you don't have the same closing costs that lenders charge, both points and also junk fees. So something to keep in mind with credit cards. So anyway, I bought this house, 14 grand with credit cards, put another 12 to 13 into it for renovations. And I paid the contractor with the credit card and paid the extra 2 to 3% convenience fee for that. And this was a Burr property where it was a fixer-upper, and I was renovating it to then refinance and keep as a rental. So the plan was always to pay off my credit card balances within a few months, right? Like I'm going out and I'm refinancing this with a long-term rental property mortgage to then pay off the credit card balances. So from the very beginning, there was a plan in place to knock out this credit card debt, right? The problem with credit cards, of course, is they have very high interest rates, so you don't want to be paying them for very long. But a couple months, that's not a big deal, right? And way offsets the closing costs that I would have paid if I'd gone through a hard money lender to do this. So anyway, that is the one time that I did that. And from a financing perspective, it did fine. I'll tell you what did not go fine with that property is I had professional tenants move in there, and they dragged out the eviction for like 11 months, and then they did all kinds of damage to the property and vandalism when they left out of spite. And that's the kind of stuff that happens when you go too low end with rental properties.
Right,
so don't buy low end rental properties.
To do with
which had nothing to do with the financing.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, so Denny and I, a lot of people out there, maybe their credit card limits aren't very high. So maybe you only have like a $20,000 limit on your credit card, and you're saying, well, there's no way for me to go out and buy a house with a $20,000 limit on my credit card. You can go out there as a real estate investor and open unsecured business credit cards and lines of credit. In fact, Denny and I work with a company that specializes in helping real estate investors do this. We'll put a link to that in the show notes here. But they help real estate investors open typically between, $100,000 and $250,000 in unsecured business credit. So business credit lines, business credit cards, and in many cases, those are 0% introductory APR cards. So you have
our program's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good program. So between 12 to 24 months in interest-free financing with those cards. So yeah, that's another option on the table in addition to your personal credit cards. So anyway, let's zoom out a step here, Denny, and let's just talk about sort of the broader strategy here and how this might work for someone who either flips houses or does Burr investing. So you can take out a hard money loan if that's what you wanted to do to cover the bulk of the purchase price, let's say 80% of the purchase price. And then maybe you use your credit card to cover the other 20% down payment, right? Or even the first round of draws. So hard money loans, they will finance 100% of the renovations, but you have to come out of pocket yourself first to do each set of draws, and then you get reimbursed after that round of work is finished, after that draw is finished by the hard money lender. So the card can help you cover that initial round of updates, right? Now, credit cards do charge cash advance fees, but there is a way around this. So, Denny, tell us about the services out there that people can use if they want to get around paying high cash advance fees and those extra low limits on cash advances.
Well, I mean, one of it is just use the credit card for, like you said before, to buy the the stuff that you need.
Yeah, and there are services out there too. Like one of them is called Plastic with a Q at the end instead of a C. And what they will do is they will send that money to you or to whatever service provider you need them to send the money to. They do charge a fee. It's a 2.9% fee. But again, that is in lieu of paying a cash advance fee, right? So, again, these are short-term investing strategies, at least for the beginning, for the intro financing. You're going to be using a hard money loan for these. So whether you're flipping a fixer-upper or refinancing to keep it as a BRRRR property, either way, you're only going to be holding the balance on these credit cards for a couple of months, right?
Right.
So,
Or if you got a really good deal on it and there's some equity in it, you can always tap into that.
yeah. I mean, but that's refinancing, right? So refinancing out with a BRRRR, yeah.
Or a line of credit.
Yeah, yep. Now, the risk here when you're buying properties with credit cards, whether that's the entire thing, the entire cost, or whether that's just a secondary financing behind a hard money loan, the risk is that the property doesn't sell or refi for what you need it to, and you are left with a loss, right? You're left coming out of pocket. So that brings you back to square one, where you have a credit card balance sitting out there and you have to come out of your own pocket to pay it off. But that is really, it's the same risk that applies to flips and to BRRRR deals, is that you end up coming out of pocket because you miscalculated what you can sell it for or what you can refinance it for. And that's one of the challenges of those two strategies. So you got to be aware of that stuff. These are risks inherent.
It's also really important when you're doing your numbers to not only include the possibility of paying the interest on a credit card.
Yeah, the carrying costs.
Like you always have to add some type of cushion in there in case, as you're fixing things up, something big happens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you always want to build in a buffer for unforeseen expenses when you're renovating a property, because there's always going to be something. And in fact, that's like play one in the playbook for contractors, is to underbid the job and then halfway through be like, whoa, maybe it's going to cost a little more money. We found this thing behind the walls and it's going to cost an extra $5,000. Like, that's unfortunately the world we live in, with many unscrupulous contractors. Not every contractor, but a lot of contractors are going to charge you more midway through the job. And sometimes it's legitimate. Maybe they actually do find a surprise. Sometimes it's just a ploy to squeeze more money out of you. But, like you said, Denny, that is exactly why you need to build in a buffer for unforeseen expenses and for jobs just taking longer than expected. Most contractors will be time optimists, shall we say, on how long a job will take, and then it'll inevitably take twice as long. So anyway, we will put the link in the chat here for where you can open up some business lines of credit and credit cards. It's sparkrental.com/credit-lines. And Denny, is there anything else you want to add before we call this episode complete?
I think before you not only have a cushion, but you really, really, really want to know the area that you're purchasing. Like, maybe Brian could have done before he did that thing.
Oh, yeah, I messed up.
And know the prices and stuff, especially now where everything is so up and down. You don't want to get stuck into doing this and then find out after you did all that work, you're not even going to recoup it on a sale or rental or whatever.
Yeah, and at the time that we're recording this, real estate markets around the country are softening. And in fact, both Zillow and Redfin are projecting property values to go down in the U.S. over the next 12 months. So, word of caution. Something to keep in mind.
I'm a real estate agent, and so I get notifications on certain properties and whatnot. And probably since the last 2 years or maybe even more, I've gotten more price reduction notifications than I've seen in, yeah.
Yeah, markets are definitely softening. Not every single market, of course, but as a nationwide trend, real estate markets are softening. It is becoming a buyer's market. So again, maybe that will create great deals for you as a buyer, as an investor, but beware of that on the back end when you go to sell or refinance. All right, on that note, if you got a fresh perspective from this episode, please subscribe to the show. We are putting out these expectation-defying episodes twice a week, bucks outside the box, unconventional money advice. And if you didn't get anything out of this episode, email us and tell us why, what you want to hear more of. support@sparkrental.com. And lastly, consider... Yeah, exactly. There you go. And consider joining us in the Co-Investing Club. We get together every month and we vet a new hands-off real estate investment that we all go in on for $5,000 or more. Optionally, of course. None of these are mandatory deals, but anyone who in the Co-Investing Club can go in on these passive real estate investment deals for a lot less than typical private equity real estate requires. And if you're new to that whole concept of passive real estate investing, we have a whole free course on it, sparkrental.com/free. And in the meantime, stay weird, unconventional investor.